HOA filed a lien on our home, even though we've been paying them monthly since we bought the place. My wife and I are facing a bit of a strange quandary, and we would love any feedback you may have regarding an issue with our HOA. We're located in northern Utah. To put it simply, we received a notice of our HOA filing a lien against us and our house for overdue payments, threatening to foreclose on our home if we don't pay them 2.5 years worth of back pay from when we first bought our place. The thing is, we've been paying the HOA monthly since we've moved here. They've sent us a bill for $96 every month, and we're always prompt with our payments. And then, out of nowhere, we got this notice yesterday saying that we owe them an additional $600 plus $350 for legal fees. So I called the legal team that they're using, and I found out that apparently we're supposed to be paying 2 HOAs. The one we've been paying regularly is the smaller, more local HOA, and there's a larger master HOA that also expects payment from us, roughly $19 or $20 per month. Except we've never heard of this parent company. They've never contacted us once, let alone to send a bill of any kind. All HOA contact that we've ever had was with the smaller local company that we're familiar with. So this lien and legal notice is literally the first we have ever heard of these people or any financial responsibility that we have to them. As far as we've been aware, for the last 2+ years, we were completely square on our homeowner fees. We were worried it might be a scam, so we checked with our neighbors and they confirmed it. There is definitely a second HOA. Not only that, they went through a nearly identical situation, minus the lien, a few months back, and implied that several others in our neighborhood have had to deal with this very thing. My question is, do we have any legal basis to push back on this? Obviously, we are happy to pay any bills moving forward, provided they actually ever send us a bill for once. But we are in no position to suddenly cough up $600 back pay for a fee that we didn't even know existed 2 days ago. At the very least, even if they force us to pay the $600, I would hope that we can convince them to cover their own legal fees. After all, if they had ever sent us correspondence of any kind, a letter, an email, a phone call, anything to let us know that they existed and expected payment, they never would have needed to get a lawyer involved in the first place. I'm in the process of creating a written statement contesting the fees and don't want to be so bold that I shoot myself in the foot. But the whole thing seems genuinely preposterous to me. We always try to stay on top of our bills, and since we didn't know this second HOA even existed, I honestly don't know what we could have done differently to avoid this situation. Do you agree with this? To grab all the CC&R documents from when you bought the house, get a real estate lawyer, and have them review it to see if they have any other questions on that, and then they say it's a common ploy to jack up cost. And then this commenter wonders if there's a second HOA parent, they'd be interested to know if they're run by the same company as the child one that they've been paying. What would you do? This sounds very strange. Let me know. We are screwed, posted by Cunning Logic. I made the mistake of buying into a small rural equestrian HOA because it didn't act like an HOA. Overall, as a non-board member, it was great. I paid $300 a year, the grass around the road was mowed along an area that would tear up my nice fancy mower if I did it, and I managed to utilize the HOA to get an over $100,000 discount on running fiber internet out this far. They wanted $120,000 to run fiber to a single house, but offered to run it to an HOA for $50,000 split among everyone who wanted it. I needed it for work and had accepted that $120,000 cost as part of the price of buying the house. I got fiber to my house for something like $4,200, saving almost $116,000. This discount also landed me the love of my neighbors, as we were end of the line for ADSL, meaning sub-2 MIP speeds and connections that drop 50+ times a day. We now have unmetered gig up and gig down, and it's great. Then, I joined the board as the treasurer. Frankly, I wanted to ensure money wasn't wasted and that the association remains low conflict. An emergency repair situation led me to auditing the association's records, as I was suspect of spending association-wide funds on repairing a limited common property. I was right, and I found other things. So first off, we had never filed taxes in over 25 years. We had no valid registered agent, so if we got sued, we wouldn't know, and we'd likely get a default judgment. The addresses for our associations registered with the state were invalid, so we would easily be forced into court-supervised receivership, and some of our records were intentionally destroyed years ago by a past board member who has since moved, making a complete audit impossible and completely filling all of the missing tax returns impossible. And for 25 years, we've been using an invalid EIN. Our bank won't even let me correct this. We have no reserve or emergency fund, and our basic essential costs are more than we bring in. We've never raised dues, only lowered them in 25 years, and the board has no means to raise the dues enough to cover our yearly minimal expenses. We're underinsured by a lot, and the state of our infrastructure of a subset of owners makes seeking more insurance risky. The grammar and wording of our covenants is bad. They essentially require me to have a horse when they intend to allow me to have 4. They grant me permission to have a tiger or anything when they intend to disallow it. As someone who used to keep venomous snakes for fun, it is tempting. Based on the published case law and the general court attitude in my state, the intent of the covenants is meaningless, and it's the written word that matters. Some members have deeds without the covenant restrictions on them, and I've found 25 years of financial misappropriation. We even have 15 grand in our association and are facing the immediate need of $300,000 to $800,000 in infrastructure repairs in the very near future. That can only be spent from funds from a subset of members, not me, thankfully. And we have a buttload of other concerns, some likely illegal, that I haven't had time to research yet. Eventually, a member is going to sue the ever-loving heck out of the HOA and edit to prevent misappropriation of funds or covenant-violating assessments that will be attempted. I guess I wasn't clear the type of lawsuit I expect to see, and I'll probably join them when that happens. I could and might write a book on how to audit an HOA once this is sorted, or I quit. As a commenter said, the blind leading the blind. Holy cow, this is a wild situation. Are you ready for some HOA justice with an update at the end? This one's called Fool Me Once, Shame on You. Fool Me Twice, I'll Bury You, posted by Welcome to My Mind. This is primarily sweet revenge, but it was achieved by maliciously complying. Background. I work for a very large roofing company, and in this particular region, there are only 3 companies that are considered when it comes to larger commercial projects. So that's like apartment complexes, condos, and so on. And my company is one of them. We all had worked the region as friendly competitors so much so that up to this point, if one of us landed a large deal but didn't have the time to complete it, we would hand it off to one of the other 2 in good faith. We'd be paid a finder's fee based off of the cost of the total job, and the cycle would continue. That is, until the following incident went down. 2 years ago, I got a contract for a commercial metal building but did not have the crews to spare for this project. So I called the owner of one of the other 2 companies, let's call him Mr. D for D-Bag, that I previously mentioned could handle this, and I referred him the deal, which he graciously accepted. My finder's fee here would have been about 40 grand. A pretty hefty chunk of change, but he probably made 5 times that in profit. He never paid me this. I tried calling him dozens of times to get paid, but he was now dodging me. Eventually, my number and email were blocked from calling his phone, office, and both work and personal emails. Okay, if that's how you want to be, 2 can play at this game. Fast forward a couple months, and there was a massive storm that damaged a huge condo complex. I'm talking several hundred units. At this particular complex, the HOA board made the decision on what company would be selected to do the work. I knew several members and they knew of my work, so I was called in to assist with the adjustment from the insurance company and make sure that they were taken care of under the assumption that I would get the contract for this deal. I met the adjuster on site who knew me and my company very well, as we had been working the same market for nearly a decade at this point. He and I tag-teamed the adjustment to speed it along, and he also used my knowledge to help him understand what all needed to be covered. He primarily did flood damage claims, so he wasn't the most knowledgeable about roofing. Thus, he deferred to me for my expertise quite often when it came to these claims, especially pricing. This comes into play later. We finished the adjustment after 2 full days on site, and the adjuster heads off to go to work on the estimate, which he will have in about a week. At this time, Mr. D from the previously mentioned company finds out about this property and tries to finagle his way into getting the contract. Turns out he knew the president of the HOA through some mutual friends. Mr. D bribed the president with a cruise to the Caribbean and a free new roof on his son's home to try and get the deal. Now, the entire board, aside from the president, was backing me at this point, and he wanted me to do the work, but the dude just wasn't having it. I was forwarded an internal email chain from one of the friendly board members where Mr. President flat out replied, "I don't give a crap, I will not let OP do our roofs." At this point, the other board members could easily just outvote him and give the job to me, and he knows this and tells Mr. D. So, what does Mr. D do in all of his infinite wisdom? Well, Turbo Nuts decided to buy all the material needed for the project, has it delivered, and has a crew start tearing off our roof without a signed contract. He did this knowing it would force the board's hand and they'd have to use him, solidifying him as the contractor. Okay, so I lost the deal, but where does my revenge and deliciously evil compliance come in, you ask? Well, remember when I said we were all waiting for the adjuster to write the estimate? We were about to get it. Now, anyone who has ever dealt with an insurance claim knows the insurance company always underpays the first time around. It's just how it is. You then deny acceptance of their price, send in your estimate, and negotiate. That is, unless you agree to their estimate up front. So, the day before Mr. D pulls his stunt, I get an email from the adjuster who is completely unaware of what is transpiring with his first draft of the estimate. As per usual, he sends it asking me to review it and to see if the pricing is right. Oh boy, was it not! This project should have cost anywhere between $500,000 to $600,000, and his estimate was for $240,000. Fun fact, if a capable contractor and the customer agree to an insurance estimate, it makes it nearly impossible to ask for more money down the road, since the customer and person able to do the work agreed to the original price. I think you already know where this is going. I replied back, "Yeah, looks good. Cut that check and send it to the HOA." So I went to the HOA the following day and I gave them the insurance estimate. I told them they just had to call the adjuster and confirm that they also approved it, and they did exactly that. I wished them the best of luck and to give this to Mr. D, as he will need to get that contract finally signed for that price. I didn't put up a fight. I didn't argue or try to get the deal back. I simply went in knowing that I was no longer getting the deal and would have to accept that. Poof! I disappeared into the wind to let my plan play itself out. I found out a few months later from my friends on that board that Mr. D went absolutely ape crap when they gave him the agreed upon price. He tried calling the adjuster and getting a new price set, but the adjuster just replied that if he couldn't do it for that price, I was more than able to. He knew that he was screwed because he'd already committed himself to re-roofing that entire complex no matter what. He lost about $100,000 on that project based on my calculations. On top of that, he tried to cut every corner imaginable to get his costs down and ended up doing an absolutely terrible job. So terrible that the HOA is now suing him for not standing behind his work, as numerous leaks have sprung up, and some of the work is so shoddy it can be seen from the street, and he is refusing to pay for it or come back and correct anything. He would have been better off to just do the project properly, eat the loss, which his company was large enough that he could eat it and not go under, and walk away, tail between his legs. He is not smart enough to come to this conclusion, as I found out. You try to be stingy and to bite my hand that fed you, then you come back for seconds, I'll bury you. Occasionally, I do feel bad knowing that his company couldn't even get a contract for a chicken coop at this point. But then I remember that he purposefully went out of his way to try and screw me and try to destroy any and all mutual respect that we had for one another. He made his bed, now he gets to lie in it. Update: Mr. President ended up not getting his promised Caribbean vacation or free roof, FYI. Mr. D reneged on that pretty fast. I also later found out that one of the workers slipped and fell into the attic and went through the ceiling of Mr. President's unit. He was fine, by the way. Think Tom Hanks in the money pit when he falls through the floor. I got a good chuckle out of that one. Did you ever get your 40,000? Oh heck no, and I never will more than likely, but I've made it back in other ways since this. Because since he has destroyed his reputation, myself and company number 3 are doing all the large projects in the area. All this work split 2 ways is better than 3 ways. Myself and company 3 definitely got overloaded for a bit there, but we both managed and actually both grew in size and profits at an outrageous scale afterwards. So yeah, it all worked out. And we're on great terms because now we're the only 2 left who get these big jobs. The large lost world, property management, HOAs, and private owners, is a small one, so word traveled fast. Now they did ask me to fix the mistakes that Mr. D made. I steered them towards a crew that could do it far cheaper than I could, being the middleman and all, and how to get those costs reimbursed by Mr. D. The repairs were made and the costs were reimbursed. A neighbor hit my car and lied about it, so I've ruined 300 pounds of meat while he was on vacation, posted by LIEN. This happened about 5 or 6 years ago. For some context, my neighbor, we'll call him Chester, is your stereotypical weekend outdoorsman type. He owns at least 10 different baseball caps and they all have camo on them. He's one of those. He drives a Jeep, which will be important later, and usually spends his weekends either hunting, fishing, or prepping for when the bombs drop. I tried to explain to him once that we were within the fallout range of a major city, so if it got hit, we'd be screwed either way, but whatever. Everyone needs a hobby, and some people's is collecting canned peaches. 2 weeks before the revenge, I came outside to see my car had a broken window on the passenger side, and that part of the frame was dented just above the door handle. I can tell immediately from the size and the shape of the dent exactly what it was from. As I said, my neighbor, Chester, drives a Jeep, and mounted on his front grille is a cable winch that he uses for pulling stumps and whatnot. It juts out almost 1.5 feet in front of the bumper and is made of solid metal. Anyone with a picture of the winch and the shape of the dent in my car could CSI that crap just from eyeballing it. The dent is almost identically shaped and situated at the same height the winch was mounted. On top of that, Chester lives directly across the street from me, and he likes to back into his driveway. Conveniently enough, my car is always parked on the street, so he has ample opportunities to hit it. I asked Chester about it, and without saying anything, he shook his head while biting his lip like some clueless cartoon character. I then asked if anyone who borrowed his car might have done it, because the winch itself was pretty scratched up, almost like he's been ramming it into things all over town. Again, Chester silently shakes his head and then tries to tell me it was probably teenagers. No exposition, mind you, he just blamed it on the teenagers. I was fuming, but I kept my composure and went home to call the police and my insurance company to report it. I managed to get a competent police officer who told me point blank that it was clear what happened, but without a witness, it would be pointless to try and prove it. The insurance agent was equally certain of Chester's guilt, but ended up recommending that I pay out of pocket for the repair. Since I was parking on the street, it was a factor the insurance company might use against me if I filed the claim. When it came time for them to recalculate and adjust my monthly rate, I could see a significant increase. A few hundred out of pocket right now could save me several hundred a year going forward if my rate was increased due to my own negligence, which is what the claim would, unfortunately, be categorized as. Raw deal for sure, but at least he was honest with me. Fast forward to 2 weeks later, Chester and his family are going up north to rough it in nature for a week, and despite my cold attitude towards him in recent days, he asked me to keep an eye on his house while he's gone, since I'm the only person in the neighborhood that he trusts apparently. I agreed to do it, not because I had any type of revenge in mind, but because he gifted me a large case of beer for my service. His one request was that I call him if we have any extreme weather, because he'd need me to check up on something. 2 nights after he left, we had a nasty storm, wind and hail, and even a few rolling blackouts. The next morning I called Chester to ask what he needed me to check on, but he didn't answer. Knowing Chester, he'd probably set up camp in some rural part of America with no dang cell phone service, even though he asked me to call him if this happened. After a few failed attempts, I went over to his house to inspect for any potential issues that might have arisen from the weather. I figured he was probably worried about his garage flooding, since his yard was frequently a moat after heavy rain. I went into the garage and there was no flooding, but something caught my eye immediately. 4 large freezer chests lined up side by side, taking a huge chunk of the wall up. I peeked inside one and I immediately realized what Chester was worried about. All 4 of them were packed from floor to lid with meat. Some of it was still in packages from the grocery store, and some of it was wrapped in butcher paper, likely game picked up from Chester's hunting exploits. But on top of one of the freezers was something else that seemed out of place. It was a red Solo cup full of frozen water with a penny sitting on top. I thought that was weird and dismissed it immediately, but curiosity got the better of me later that day when I got home. I decided to Google it, and what I learned instantly clicked as a way to get the ultimate revenge on Chester for hitting my car and sticking me with the repair bill. There's an old life hack that people used to use when they went on vacation. You freeze a cup of water and then place a penny on top of it and stick it in your freezer. If your power goes out, the water will eventually melt and the penny will fall to the bottom of your cup. If you return home and the penny is at the bottom of the cup, your freezer was off for an extended period of time, and now everything in it has potentially defrosted and become unfit for consumption. I immediately got up and ran back to Chester's garage to scope out the legitimacy of my nefarious deed. As luck would have it, Chester's circuit breaker was hidden behind a tool shelf, not directly visible to the naked eye. Who would put a shelf in front of a circuit breaker? Chester, of course. So I promptly took the cup out of the freezer and sat it on Chester's porch to let it get a little sun. After a few hours, the ice had melted enough that the penny slipped right to the bottom of the cup. I then put the cup back in the freezer, being very careful to position it exactly where it was when I took it out, before moving on to the last phase of my insidious plan. I started blowing up Chester's phone with calls and frantic text messages. "Chester, where's your circuit breaker? I can't find it and your power is off. Get back to me ASAP." I did this countless times over the next 2 days before I finally got a call back from Chester. He told me immediately where to go in his garage to find the circuit breaker, which, of course, I already knew thanks to my prior detective work. I sat the phone down and flipped the circuit breaker twice. Once to turn it off, and then a second time to turn it back on, giving it just enough time to mess with the digital clocks on all his appliances. And with that, my revenge was complete. All that was left was for Chester to come back home, which took another 2 days. When Chester got back home, I was nervous, but eager to see if my charade had worked. The next day, I got a knock on my door. It was Chester. He asked me if I wanted some meat to give to my dogs. Apparently, the power had been off for too long, and all the meat in his freezers had thawed out while he was gone, so he was throwing it out. I asked him how much he had, and he said it was probably somewhere close to 300 pounds. He didn't want to waste it all, so he asked if I wanted to give some to my dogs. I graciously helped myself to roughly half a freezer's worth of meat, some of which I stored in my own fridge, and the rest Chester was nice enough to offer to hold on to in his freezer until I needed it. The kicker is that Chester had no idea the meat actually never defrosted and was still perfectly good. That night, I helped myself and my dogs to a couple of nice steaks, courtesy of old Chester himself, who was still busy walking the neighborhood unloading the tainted meat on anyone who had a cat or dog that might want it. It was at least 4 or 5 months before me and my dogs went through all the meat that Chester had given us. I don't know if I made all my money back for the repairs on my car, but I didn't have to buy any meat for many a fortnight. He literally probably cost Chester over $1,000 of damage. 300 pounds of meat, that's a lot of a cow right there. What do you think? New neighbor walks into our house because she knew the previous owner, posted by Feman26, Iron Man. The cast is me, fiance, my dad, and the entitled neighbor. So this happened 2 years ago when my fiance and I bought our townhouse. Here's some backstory. We found a townhouse for sale in a complex. It was in our price range, but it needed some work, mainly the basement. On the disclosure, the previous owner stated that the basement had flooded a few years previously. However, the basement was carpeted and it had never been replaced or cleaned, so it smelled mildewy. The way the house is set up, there are 2 entrances, the front door and a door in the basement, both with doorbells. The basement was in 2 sections, an office and a playroom with the outside door. Now this is relevant for later. Okay, back to the story. I took a week off work and my fiance was only able to take 2 days off so that we could start cleaning and prepping our new house. First full day, we had cut the basement carpet out and started scraping the glue off the floor. When my fiance was back at work, I was there alone cleaning. My father is a bit of a handyman and he was really excited about us getting a house, so he was going to come down and help us. I was in the basement sweeping and cleaning, and because of the amount of dust, I left the door to the outside open and then went into the office to start cleaning in there, and that's when my father calls. Here's how I remembered the conversation going. "Hi, Dad." "Hey, kiddo, how's the new place?" "I need some work." "I am about to leave here. Do you need me to bring any tools down?" I turned to leave the office. "Oh no, I don't think so. Oh my goodness, who are you?" There, in the middle of the other section of the basement, was a strange woman, just standing there looking slightly disgusted by the mess. I nearly dropped my phone from the shock of a random person in our house. "Hi, I'm the entitled neighbor. I live in the unit over there." Me, still in shock and extremely confused. What are you doing here?" Karen replies, "I know the previous owner." What?" "You know you shouldn't leave this door open. Squirrels can get in." She then walks out the door, closing it behind her. I'm still in shock and I'm looking like a trout with my mouth open. I snap out of it when I hear my dad still on the phone. "Hello, is everything okay?" "I think I just met our neighbor." My fiance and I had a good laugh about it later. Now here's some more backstory about the previous owner and the people in the complex. So there were 3 units for sale and we picked the one that was in our price range and we liked the size too. One of the other units was Squirrel Lady's, and from what I was told by the HOA, she has since retired and moved to Florida. The other couple that was selling their unit was very nice and they've also moved. But before they left, they told us the previous owner was not well liked and was a total Karen. Her only friend was Squirrel Lady and they had both been living here for over 15 years. Nah, I don't think the previous owner moved because people didn't like her. She was at least 80 when we met and the townhouse has 2 flights of stairs. Her being fed up with the place is probably why she shouted, "I'm done," and ran out. And strangely enough, Squirrel Lady was right. We did end up having problems with squirrels. We even got a flying squirrel in our house once, but that's another story. Terrible Karen neighbor story time, and guess what? They live in an HOA. It's called Fool Me Twice, Screw You, posted by PLang67. About a month ago, my neighbor, who I have always gotten along with and am now friendly with, despite her entitled behavior, told me that she wants to add purple streaks to her hair. She asked my opinion because I'm a licensed cosmetologist, but no longer work in the field due to health reasons. My neighbor has money, and her financial situation is very comfortable, and she can easily go to a salon to get her hair done. But because she is high risk and refuses to get vaccinated, they want to put a tracking chip in her, she's not kidding, she won't go to a salon. I explained the process of adding purple streaks to her hair is labor intensive and requires that she bleach her hair first to a light yellow and then tone with a light purple color. 2 months ago, she dyed her hair black with box color. Box color is the crap that you can buy retail and not professional hair color. It's crap because they will add things like metallic dyes to the color, and bleaching may literally make your hair melt off your head. Bleaching after using box color ends with questionable results, but she did not listen to me. I told her to buy a California cap, which is a rubber cap, and pull the hair through that she wants to bleach, what bleach to buy, which volume developer, and how to pick her purple color and developer for the toner. I also told her there was no way I could do her hair. I can't stand up long due to my condition to help her. I stressed this several times. Instead, I helped her write down everything, and she seemed okay with it, and said her friend was going to help her. I wished her good luck and promptly forgot all about it. I forgot until the Memorial Day weekend when she called me in a panic, screaming her hair was all messed up, and I had to come help her. I hobbled my way to her place, and when I get there, I see a plastic highlighting cap in her hand. not the one I told her to buy, and the friend looking confused. Her hair was in no way messed up. They hadn't done anything. My entitled neighbor starts ranting how the cap wasn't working, how it pulls too much hair through, how the hook to pull the hair was stabbing her head, and how I had to do her hair for her right now. She put me on the spot and kept the pressure on until I agreed to foil her hair for her. I just wanted to keep the peace, as she is close to the HOA board members and my next door neighbor. I have seen what she does to people who tick her off, and I didn't want to cause a scene. So I stood there in a considerable amount of pain and foiled her hair and toned it. She was happy, and I thought that was the end of it, so I left. She called me the next day and demanded that I come back and add more highlights because she said it wasn't enough. By now, I was ticked. The first time, I did it to myself by not embarrassing her in front of her friend. This time, she is most definitely taking advantage of me and acting like a brat. I went to her place again to tell her that I would add a few foils, but she needed to keep an eye on the collar and finish it herself. She was not happy with me at all. I again explained how I could barely stand and was having difficulty keeping my balance. She looks me dead in the face and says, "What? Is this about money? I didn't offer to pay you the last time, and now you're mad?" No. It's because you're selfish and don't listen. I can't help you anymore after I finish this. I placed her foils, set the time, and left. She was whining later in the day that her hair was all screwed up in a text. I asked for a picture and an explanation. She stated that she wanted a purple streak in the back at the bottom, so when she pulled her hair up in a ponytail, you would see the purple. Her friend bleached it. After all, it clearly wasn't that hard to do, right? Ha! But they didn't leave it on long enough, and they turned her hair Ronald McDonald orange. I told her, sorry, I can barely stand and I can't keep my balance. Just bleach it again until it turns light yellow. Wash it, towel it, dry it, and then tone it. Good luck. And now she is not speaking to me. I guess I should have led with the nope the first time instead of going over. No good deed goes unpunished, ever. Screw her. The HOA demands they put a lien on my house, but I'm not even in the HOA. If you like the first story in this video, you're going to love this one, so click a video on your screen, you don't want to miss it, and I will see you there.